Welcome back to the Sapphic podcast. I am your host, Nisa, and with me, as always, is my co-host and partner, but not in a gay way, Ellie. Ellie, how's it going?
It's been a weekend for no real reason other than my book came out yesterday. Our book came out yesterday, and yeah, God, it's been a very intense 24 hours.
I don't know if you're allowed to call it our book.
It is our book. Your name is on the cover, the dedication, and the acknowledgements, and the copyright.
I still don't know what the dedication says.
I mean, there's a sample on Amazon at the moment if you really want to read it.
Oh, there you go. I need to buy a copy and then, mail it to you and get you to sign it and then mail it back to me.
I'll have to make up an author signature.
No, yeah, but I want the real signature, though.
What, my real name?
I guess you don't have to give me that.
I mean, you know my name. I just mean I'll have to make up a signature for my author name.
Yeah, I gotcha. Damn. Yeah, give me your real signature.
So you can forge all my checks and royalty payments.
Exactly.
Okay. It's been a learning curve to say the least. I was so naive going into this. Yeah, it's been intense. But yeah, my goodness, the things you don't realise go into publishing a book.
You could almost fill a podcast episode with that.
I actually would love to do that. I would love to just give indie authors all of the tidbits of what not to do when you're releasing a book.
I like it.
We should just do a whole episode the fuck-ups Ellie made and what not to do.
We could do that. It is our podcast. We're allowed to do whatever the hell we want.
Yeah, I think we should. Just to help other people not do what I did.
I'm down for it.
Let's go. Yeah. I've got so many little bits of advice.
I'll put it on the calendar somewhere. But
thanks.
For today, we are diving into second chance romance. And, I feel like there's separate categories even within second chance romances, because you have the people who were friends who didn't really jump into a romance, but it's one of those where a lot of times it's they were friends, they stopped being friends, and now it's their second chance to try and rectify that situation and jump into being romantic. And then there's also the exes who were together, broke up, and now they're revisiting their romance.
Yeah, for sure. But I also feel like there's also just second chance as well with enemies to lovers.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, hate sleep together when you're at school or something. Like the cheerleader and the jock sleep together out of hate, and then all of a sudden they meet in a cafe 20 years later.
I never understood hate fucking, but that might just be me.
Yeah, no, I can't say I did either. I enjoy reading about it. I feel like it makes for some good angst and some good drama.
Yeah, and I feel like part of that is just the chemistry between them is the repressed feelings is why the sex usually ends up playing out so well.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about... Oh, no, it's not even in this episode, so I can talk about it. But if you think about Ribbonwood by Ruby Landers, I would argue that started out as hate fucking. Or at least dislike fucking.
A little bit, yeah. Because I think the first encounter between Ollie and... Lara, yeah. In the shop, Ollie was just going for it. And I'm pretty sure that started, like you said, as hate fucking.
Yeah. But then also you could kind of consider that second chance.
I'd say it was second chance, but
maybe to a lesser degree.
Yeah, just because they did hate each other so fucking much. They weren't even really in each other's orbits other than just being pissy with each other.
That's how all great love stories start.
Yeah, exactly. I fucking hate you. Hey, let's try this out.
Yeah, I fucking hate you and I'm gonna marry you one day.
Okay, but that's kind of why the second chance trope works, is because usually it's got that long divide between the first attempt and the second attempt. And so in that time, a lot of times you see that people have changed, they've matured. And so it's one of those where not only are they coming at it with a fresh view, but the people are usually very different people than they were that first go round.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that's why a lot of the second chance romances work so well, is because they've had time to build that character development.
Yeah, definitely. So thinking about that, I guess, what do you got for us as far as your favorites?
My favorites are, I feel like I know one of ours is the same, and that is Separate Like Stars by Diana Kane. Look how excited you look.
Okay, but you talked about it before and I hadn't read it and I've since read it. So now I have a lot of feelings that I gotta get out. So
yeah, I think I spoke about it, didn't I, on our Built to Last episode? And I said you have to read it. And you have since. Okay, my second one is To Be With You by TJ O'Shea.
also on my list.
And one for me is on here that I've mentioned before. I have like a traffic light system for ones that didn't work as well, and ones that just didn't work. This one for me is Amber, and that is Dear Ripley by Jacqueline Ramsden.
I'm sorry. I brought that up in, I think it was our Friends to Lovers episode, or the Built to Last is one I didn't think was as effective.
Let me start with Dear Ripley. So the story focuses on Alicia and Ripley, who are two women that were married and ended up getting a divorce. And is it that one of them moves back to town?
So one never left. The other one has decided to come back, at least temporarily, because her best friend is moving back because she's pregnant and she wants to be closer to her family. And so I think it was Ripley comes back to help support her single mom best friend.
Yeah. And I feel like the reason I said it worked and it didn't work for me in the sense that I feel like they were perhaps pressured into being back together by their mutual friends. I could feel the love between them by the end, but I feel like it was an uphill battle to get them to actually get to that stage.
Yeah, definitely their best friends were trying to push them together. The whole town was kind of trying to push them together. I feel like in those books, oftentimes they're set in small towns and it's like everybody knows this couple because they were the couple, which is so weird that the whole town always is like all about these teenage sweethearts. Like, why are you so invested in this, guys? That's really weird when you think about it as an adult, that you're like, why is this entire town so invested in this teen romance? And now they're trying to push two adults back together. Like, what are you doing, small town?
I feel like you just ruined several people's favorite books.
Okay, but that's the thing, is like oftentimes that's, I feel like, what second chance romances are, is it's always that couple who was like the it couple, but it's never like their peers, solely their peers, trying to push them back together. It's like the entire fucking town, like old man Johnson down at the hardware store is like, hey, did you see so-and-so is back in town? And it's like, dude, you're like 60 years old. Why do you care about these people who dated 10 years ago in high school? What are you doing? Do you have nothing better to do?
I feel like the author that is probably the most guilty of that is Robin Alexander, who we both love dearly.
Don't you besmirch Robin Alexander. Don't you do it.
I adore Robin Alexander and her books that I've read, but she has a real tendency to write meddling townies.
She does. And I love it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, when you think about it from like a real life perspective, isn't it kind of weird that like the 70-year-old down the street is trying to push these two people back together, when you're like, okay, so they dated 10 years ago when they were like 16. So you were still in your 60s and now you're trying to push them back together. Like, how invested were you in these two 16-year-olds? Like, what? Why?
Yeah, it definitely sounds creepy. I mean, I've only ever lived in London my entire life, so I've never lived anywhere remotely small. And so I can't quite imagine.
What? That makes you really lucky. Speaking as somebody who has been in small towns, you are so goddamn lucky.
Yeah, I do. It's an entirely different world, I imagine.
Yeah, there are a lot of aspects of everybody knowing your fucking business, even as a teenager. And now that I'm an adult, I think that's so weird, but it is a reality of small towns. So I can't even say it's like just something that's tropey in books or movies or TV shows. It's a real thing. But, you know, sitting here as a 37-year-old, I'm like, that's so creepy. Why do you care? Why do you care?
Yeah, no, it's an odd one. But I will say, why it's Amber and not one that didn't work for me was I really thought it was a fresh perspective to have them communicate only through letters that they'd written to one another. I appreciated the fresh take.
Exactly. Like, as far as writing goes and as far as communication styles goes, I think that's definitely novel and not something that we see frequently. But I don't know. For me, I'm like, well, you could technically communicate better because you're not face to face with that person. You're not having to deal instantaneously with what's being said, and you can really sit down and think about like your feelings, their feelings, what they've presented. So it might be a better communication style from that aspect, but at the same time, it's like you guys are taking like a month or 2 months here to have one conversation that you guys could probably have in like a quick hour if you just sat down.
But then we wouldn't have a book.
That's true. That's true. That's why I say, as far as like the narrative is concerned, it is great for the narrative. But again, I'm like, you guys, if you sat down for a good hour and just said all these things out loud, like, you've been separated for 10 years, you had to have already thought all this shit through, I would hope,
Mhm.
if you're contemplating getting back together. So you could just sit and talk, and this would be great. But no, I see what you're saying.
I can see you buzzing to move on to one that we both love. I'll let you dive into Separate Like Stars.
Oh my god. Okay, so Separate Like Stars. You brought it up, and I gave you so much shit about it in the Built to Last because it was two people who were best friends, dated. Everybody thought they were gonna end up together. And then out of nowhere, Olivia just drops out of Jordan's life, totally ghosts her. And then 15 years later, Olivia moves back, and Jordan is now living in her parents' old house because now she's a writer. She doesn't really want to live out in the big city. But then Olivia decides that she wants to open this new, like, small town restaurant, but it's like high class, but in a small town. It's like this whole thing she wants to do. And so she lives in her parents' old house. So they are now next door neighbors. And that's how they had met originally. And so I fucking love this book. I know I gave you so much shit. I hadn't read it, to be fair, so I was making assumptions about how they got back together. But, you know, they both really matured. And when they got back together, they didn't start the romance right away because Jordan was actually dating somebody. But even so, they didn't even start as friends. They started as, can we at least be civil neighbors to one another and not fight when we see each other? And then it was a slow build to friendship. And then once Jordan broke up with her girlfriend, they didn't get together right away. It was, again, very, very slow to rebuild that friendship. And I think it took, I want to say within the context of the book, it was over 6 months. It might have been closer to a year before they actually started delving back into the romance. And prior to getting back into the romance, they laid out everything of what happened between them, what ruined their friendship, what happened with their relationship. In the book, you know, they talk about Olivia's mother's death, and that's how I'll say that. Everything in between and what happened, where they were at with relationships. They have all the conversations as friends prior to jumping into, hey, let's try a date. And then even with their dating, they take it like super slow. And I think that's the reason why it really worked for me, is because they both knew they still loved each other, but there was so much bitterness and resentment that they took the time to really make sure that they dealt with all of that bitterness and resentment before they jumped into the romance. And I thought that was mature as hell.
It was. That's why I had them on my best couples that were built to last.
Yeah, I give my seal of approval on that one now. Those two are never gonna break up.
Never ever. I will say I was disappointed with their epilogue, only because I feel like you said we had spent so much time with that couple over such a long period of time. And then their epilogue was, I want to say, maybe 2 weeks after the last chapter.
It was really quickly after that last chapter.
It wasn't a long time jump. And for me, again, this is personal preference, but I need in my epilogues for there to be a significant amount of time between that chapter and an epilogue. Otherwise, you may as well just call it the next chapter, not an epilogue.
Yeah.
Controversial, I know. But in an epilogue, I want to see some kind of significant time passing where they are either, you know, happily still together, or a big event has happened, like a wedding or a business partnership or something. I want to see there some kind of development. Whereas I don't think in Separate Like Stars we got that, unfortunately, which I would have loved because I do adore that story.
Oh yeah, it's probably now one of my favorite books. It's slow burn, and it's second chance, and it's friends to lovers, and it's perfect.
See, if I was more of a petty person, I would insert right here a clip of where you ripped into me for it on our last episode.
I didn't rip into you for that book specifically. I ripped into you for, you know, people who broke up and then got back together. You know what? Fuck off. I have no other argument.
Fuck off, fuck you, fuck your opinion.
I mean, I didn't say it, but if you're gonna say it.
Well, okay. I feel like we're going to need an explicit warning on this episode.
Don't listen around your kids, guys.
Yeah, why would you? This is not that kind of podcast.
I mean, I film it with my kids sometimes, so, you know,
yeah,
maybe I'm just a bad mom.
No, you're not. They're just like mini producers on the episodes.
Exactly. Little man helps me edit sometimes.
Oh, I know. I've seen the edits. They're adorable. You leave them in
Yeah.
our shared drive, of course I see them.
Well, I mean, I need to have proof that I'm not the only editor on this.
Yeah, no. One day when he's like older and he needs to say he did work experience, he can say he worked on his mum's podcast.
Okay, To Be With You, the other one that we had in common. So I remember reading To Be With You and messaging that I had to look the author up because there were so many similarities to me and my first girlfriend. I was like, is she writing under a pseudonym and is just showing all the receipts on our relationship? It was so relatable for me, and not even like the overarching story, but very like small details throughout the book. I felt attacked.
I do remember you messaging me like, okay, it's not her, thank fuck.
God, that would be petty as hell.
Again, I'd still be here for it. Like I said last episode, I love the idea of an author dedicating their book to their ex.
Yeah, I still think that would be fucked. But also, as a reader, it would make good drama. Like, you get the popcorn and you start, just
Yeah, I'm
seeing
here
what
for the
happens.
goss. Yeah, no, I'm here for the tea,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that one because it's basically the Sapphic version of Romeo and Juliet. Like,
I will say, I think this was the first book that actually properly broke my heart.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Which part?
There were so many moments. There was a moment in the garage where Victoria's mother confronted Leah and basically threatened to have her. Did she threaten to have her deported? Or it alluded to the fact that she was a woman with power and privilege and could basically ruin Leah's life and her family's life.
Yeah, she definitely did ask, are your parents here legally? And basically did threaten to have her family deported, which in America is always a very real possibility, especially these days. But
yeah, and I think what broke my heart most about that chapter, I was about to say that scene, that chapter, was not the fact that Victoria's mum had done that, but it was Victoria's reaction to that. She just stayed silent. And I was just like, I know you're a teenager, but what are you doing?
okay. So, maybe controversial, but as somebody who had a mother who did such a fucking similar thing to my first girlfriend, which again is one of the things I thought was eerily similar to my own life, as somebody who had that happen, when you think about confrontation, they always say there's, fight, flight, and now we recognize that there's freeze and fawn. And so I really think that she froze in that moment when met with that confrontation. And I think it just, when that happens, at least for me, like, what the fuck do you do? Like, there's so much going on in your brain that I feel like I get overloaded. And in that minute, I'm going through everything I could say and do. And it's like my whole body just shuts down and I don't know what to do. And so I really do think that goes back to like that evolutionary standpoint of how you deal with a conflict. And freeze is very much one of those that I think that's what she did.
Yeah, no, she did for sure. And I do think that she probably regretted it later.
Yeah. I think she tried to reach out to Leah afterwards, but Leah just wasn't talking to her at all.
Yeah, which I mean, I can see both perspectives of what happened. But I'm just like, someone that you love has just basically been threatened right in front of you. And like, where is your sort of sense of, I don't know. And again, it's easy for me to say because I've never been in that position.
Yeah. Also, I think one of the things that comes into play is when that happens, like, especially when you grow up in that homophobic type of home, it's one of those where it's not just that you're defending the person that you're with. You would also have to be defending yourself. And to admit to what is happening usually means that you could be cut off. And at the point where Victoria was, she was getting ready to go to college. Like, she needed her parents' support. Well, needed, in quotes, her parents' support. And so she just didn't even defend herself in that moment either.
That's what I mean about it being heartbreaking, was that I feel like that was probably one of the first Sapphic romance novels I read where it wasn't, I feel like I eased myself into Sapphic books in the sense that I started off very fluffy, very lovey-dovey, very happy ever after. But To Be With You was the first book I read where I was kind of like, fuck, life isn't always easy and plain sailing. And I felt so badly for Leah and Victoria.
Yeah, I definitely did as well. I could see where both of them were coming from because obviously it's not great to have somebody break up with you, but not really. Like, her mother basically, Mrs. Lockwood or whatever her name was, basically did separate them. And so that's so tough because they didn't really break up on their own terms.
No, they were definitely forced apart, but they found their way back together, which is why It is, to this day, one of my favourite books.
Yeah. So we didn't really touch on the actual getting back together part of To Be With You. I feel like the more relatable part is obviously the semi-fluffy and then heartbreaking part. But yeah, so when they get back together, there's so much to unpack there.
For starters, Victoria's engaged to someone else.
Yeah, that's kind of a problem.
To a man as well.
Yeah, that's one I brought up in the compulsory heterosexuality one, where Victoria, in defense of her little brother, comes out and says that she is a lesbian, and her fiance has that moment where he goes, oh fuck, wait, you mean bisexual, right? And she goes, no, I mean lesbian. And so, I mean, that's a pretty valid reason to break off an engagement.
And I did feel bad for him, because he seems like actually a really nice guy.
Yeah, because in the finale of the book, he actually comes back. I don't know if it's in support of her, but it was part of Mrs. Lockwood's plan to try and get them back together, but he thought that he was being brought back to support Victoria. And that's pretty stand up, because you did just get broken up with, like the engagement is off. You found out that you were dating a lesbian, you were her beard. And you're like, hey, I'll still come back and support you because I think you need it.
Yeah, and I will say as well, I think it was really refreshing to have a spouse that wasn't portrayed as abusive or an asshole.
Yeah, it was really nice to see. But I think the reason why their second chance really worked is because, like I said, they never actually broke up. They got pulled apart more than anything. But I think Victoria was more secure in that now she has her own income. Now she has her own ability to support herself. She doesn't have to rely as much on her parents. And then she got strength from seeing her little brother come out to their mother. And on top of that, I feel like she was forced by Leah to actually take that step, to not just say, okay, well, it's, you know, I can do this because of all the things I have, but she actually had to be forced to kind of confront the fact that by being with me, you're going to have to potentially give stuff up.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, I think that made them stronger in the end.
Yeah, because Leah didn't really force her into it either. It was one of those where Victoria had that moment of, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna show you that I can do this.
Yeah, and the second time round, the second chance, it worked out perfectly.
Exactly. So one I have on my list that you didn't mention was Here We Go Again by Alison Cochrane. And so it's 2 times second chance around. So I mean, on that one, I'll throw out like the trigger warning of terminal illness. So it's 2 girls who were best friends when they were kids. They had an incident at a party where I think they were playing Spin the Bottle, and the bottle landed on the other one. So it was Logan and Rosemary. Rosemary spun the bottle and it landed on Logan. And like all the guys were like, oh, you guys got a kiss, you know, because they were teenagers. And so Rosemary was having a little bit of a gay panic moment. She was like, no, we're not going to do this. And Logan's like, it's not even a big deal. And she kisses Rosemary. But after that, it was one of those where Rosemary had such a gay panic that she ends up going and kissing another guy at the party. And so Logan had feelings for Rosemary. And so they stopped being friends over that, because it was kind of one of those, like, how could you go and just kiss somebody else after that? Like, it meant a ton for me and it just didn't mean anything for you. And so they're now like enemies and rivals, because they both come back to their small town, they're teachers at the same school, and they just have all this animosity from teenagerdom that they didn't even talk about. But they both have a love for their old teacher, Joe. So Joe has a terminal illness. He asks both of them, take me on this one last road trip. Like, this is what I want to do before I die. Like, he wants to go, I think they're in, it might be Oregon or the Pacific Northwest. And he wants to travel to, I think Maine, where he had an old house that he had spent all this time, where he said he was so happy in this house, and that's where he wants to die. And so he wants them to take him on this trip there. And it's this whole story where it unfolds about all the things that he regrets in life, all the things that he didn't get to see. Joe, their teacher, is kind of trying to force him back together, because he's at the end of his life where he's like, I have regrets. I don't want you guys to have these regrets, because it's clear that, like, you guys are still friends. I think that you still have feelings for each other. And he's trying to just get them to see it, because he doesn't want them to get to the point like he is. And so that's the first second chance romance. And it's cute. I enjoy them. Yay for them. The reason I put it out there, though, is because the reason he has all those regrets is there is a man in his past, Remy, who he and Remy, the reason he was so happy in this place in Maine or wherever is because he lived there with Remy for years. And he just couldn't, I mean, he's older. I think it was in the 80s when they were together, or 70s. And so, at the peak of the AIDS epidemic and the gay scare, like, it was a time when he didn't feel like he could be out. And Remy was living his life so out and so proud, and Joe just doesn't think he can offer Remy anything because he doesn't think he can come to terms with that. He can't bring it up to his family, and so he leaves without telling Remy. And he's a young man when he does it, but it's one of those where he just runs. He flees out of fear after they've been together, I think, 8 years. So they had been together for a long ass time. And it's one of those where eventually Logan and Rosemary figure out that the detours that Joe wanted to take were leading him to places where he thought Remy might be. So they detour a few times and they hunt Remy down so that Joe can have this like apology, because Joe knows that there's no chance him and Remy can be together again, but he does want to apologize for what he did. But they do find Remy, and what ensues is like the most adorable fucking coming back together, where Remy says he never stopped loving Joe, and at any point if Joe would have come back, he would have taken him back. So it's heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking, but like they just jump right back into it. And so it's one of those where you even see parts where Remy, because Joe can't really walk very well, like Remy's carrying him and taking care of him. And so he gets to have that moment where Remy and him are together again. They're happy before Joe dies. So
literally making me cry on our podcast, and I haven't even read it.
I'm sorry,
Do
but
you
it
see
is
these
so
tears?
it's so amazing, and I know their time is short-lived, but just to see that degree of forgiveness and understand the amount of regret that he had. And they talked it out where, like, Joe said over the years he wanted to go back so many times, but he assumed that Remy would hate him, and Remy said, I never hated you. I would have always taken you back. And it was just like, oh my God, how tragic that they lost all that time because both of them were scared. I was like, oh, I would say if you're looking for a really good second chance, it's cute what Logan and Rosemary have, and seeing that play out, they eventually say, I don't want to waste any more time. But the real reason I say if you want to see a tragic second chance coming back together is for Remy and Joe.
I can't do it. I can't do that to myself.
I know you can't, and that's why I didn't recommend it to you specifically, but for our readers, if you think you can put yourself through that, because I ugly cried at the end of that book, because you know where Joe's ending is going, because that was the whole purpose of the story. So if you're in a headspace where you can read that, it's really great, but you are guaranteed you are going to cry. You are going to weep openly at the end of that. Yeah, and I think it softens the blow just a little bit because you do have Logan and Rosemary. And so you're like, well, at least, Joe was able to bring them back together, and that was his whole mission. Is he knew that they were good for each other and that they should have never like stopped being friends. And so he's trying to make sure that there isn't another young couple who gets to the end of their lives and regrets not getting together.
Oh, I love him. I would love to read about him if I thought I could handle it.
Yeah, it's heavy, and you don't get the sense of that when you read like the blurb, but boy does it pack a punch once it happens.
Second, let me just... Yeah, no, it's on my TBR, and it will swiftly be coming off my TBR.
Yeah, fair. It's a lot for some people. I was not prepared for it going into it, but I still was happy. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about like our favorites. Did you have any that weren't super effective at second chance?
No, not on my list. The only one I had was Dear Ripley. I'm trying to think. There are so many second chance romance. I feel like that and fake dating absolutely just crowd the market.
Yeah, and I mean, I can kind of see like why the fake dating one crowds the market, because it's like fun and it's very fiction based, as we discussed. You don't see much fake dating in real life. But second chance, I feel like, is one of those where there's a lot of people out there who probably wouldn't mind having a second chance. I'm not one of those people, personally.
Me
Um,
either.
I'm happy with where I'm at, but there are plenty of people who have that regret on how they handled the situation or how a relationship fell apart or, they're single now or unhappy with where they're at and they romanticize a previous relationship.
Yeah, no, not me. My exes are all assholes, and I know from our TikTok notifications that at least two of them have seen our podcasts.
I kind of hope they're watching just so they can hear the all of my exes are assholes comments.
No, yeah, they know exactly who they are. They know who I'm talking about, and I hope they
You
see
know who
this.
you are and you know what you have done.
Yeah, one's a man, one's a woman, and they're both dicks.
Okay, so let's take a page out of Lee Winters and do some vengeance planning.
I'm so down for that. Alex can be my henchwoman.
Ellie's exes, stop listening here. We're going to go into planning. Yeah, I don't understand the second chance thing, but I think kind of touching on how I had said that I get how people can romanticize old relationships. That actually kind of is why I don't love the next book I'm going to talk about. So it is a second chance romance, and I actually think that's part of the title. Like it has like the colon and says a second chance romance story.
It does. I know exactly what you're going to
Always
say.
Always Emily by Allison Root. It's not a bad book. And I feel like we always preface that when we talk about these things. Is we're never like ragging on the book itself, but talking more about the trope and kind of how we don't love how it played out. And so in the book, you have Charlie and you have Emily, as the title would imply. And so they dated and were like the it couple of it was like a music school for super gifted individuals. They were like the it couple of their school. And I believe they had a band as well. Like they played in a band together. And so there's this whole kerfluffle drama thing about something that Emily had told Charlie and it came out and like everybody knew about it. And so Emily assumes that Charlie, being the only person she told other than her friends, Charlie must have been the one who let the cat out of the bag. And so it starts with like this whole I don't trust you, even though Charlie is saying over and over, I would never do that to you. I wouldn't tell anybody. Like, please believe me. She doesn't believe Charlie. They break up, they go their separate ways. Charlie is super bitter about this. And even Emily herself kind of hates Charlie for a long time for it. And so for me, I don't love the execution because they meet at their 10-year reunion and it's like they have great chemistry, but they don't really have a conversation. And I think the way that they kick their relationship back off is they both get drunk and have like drunk hate sex, which we talked about earlier with the hate sex, And so it's one of those, they don't talk about it. They have this one night stand. Then the next night, they get drunk again and have sex again, and they're still not talking. And so it's like all these important conversations that they needed to have aren't happening. And eventually they do, but it's one of those where Emily still doesn't really believe Charlie when Charlie says, I didn't do this. She says she forgives her for doing it, which I don't think is great because there's that trust component again. Like, yeah, it's great if you forgive her. But the thing is, she's still saying very staunchly, I didn't do this and you don't believe me. So I question, how can you have a good relationship when you don't trust each other? You don't believe each other. And it's one of those where in the backdrop, there's a whole like stalking subplot too. And it just is kind of all over the place with the romance. They feel like a couple who should not be together to me. They don't seem like they've had a lot of growth. They still seem like they have a lot of bitterness over this situation. And their conversations don't really broach it until eventually like it comes out through this whole ordeal that Charlie was telling the truth the whole time. And Emily just really breezes over her apology of, I should have believed you. You shouldn't have to have it come out like this to believe her. Like, if you really love her, you should trust that she is telling you the truth. And that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I read this 100 books ago, quite literally. So didn't Emily only believe Charlie in maybe like the penultimate chapter?
Yes, yeah. It was extremely late. And I'm like, how are you guys gonna bring your relationship back together when you still don't have, as we talked about in our Built to Last episode, trust is extremely important in a relationship and you guys still don't trust each other. Like, how are you going to build a relationship off of that?
Yeah, and I feel like Emily only believed Charlie when she was handed irrefutable proof that it in fact wasn't her.
Exactly. I just don't understand how you build from that, because you still have mistrust. It's the whole reason why so many like relationships don't come back together or can't come back together after like infidelity, is because you no longer trust that person. And if you don't have trust, then what do you have in your relationship?
Nothing.
Exactly. And then on top of that, they suck at communication, which we also said was super important. I think the thing that's really bringing them back together is, hate to say it, sex. And hey, you know what? If that's what you want to build your relationship off of, that's fine. I just don't think it's going to be a very good relationship, and it's not going to endure, because there will come times where you have to put your trust in one another, and they can't. They can't do it because Emily doesn't believe Charlie still years later.
And Charlie resents her for it.
Exactly. And I don't know about you, but mistrust and resentment don't seem like a solid foundation for a relationship to me.
Yeah, I mean, what do you know? You've only been married how many years?
Married for 12 years.
I mean, yeah, so what do you know about marriage and a happy marriage?
Nothing, obviously.
Obviously.
Been
But yeah,
together
no,
for
I agree.
15 years. I don't think I know anything about relationships whatsoever.
No, clearly not. But yeah, no, I agree. I completely forgot about that one, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. And it's not a terrible book. It's okay. I probably wouldn't be jumping to recommend it to anybody because I have such a problem with that main couple.
Why do we always end on down notes?
I don't know. I don't know. It feels like the down note is the conversation killer, and so that's where we keep ending.
Yeah,
maybe we
maybe.
start with the down notes and then hope that the good books behind it will help us end better. Oh no.
Oh god.
I don't even know how we swing this into a good ending now. Separate like stars. Fucking love it. There we go.
Wait, let's bring this back. Read Separate Like Stars, everyone, because it's a brilliant, brilliant book.
One of my top 5, I'd have to say.
Also read To Be With You.
Also love it, even though it attacked me personally.
Even though the author is Niece's ex. I'm kidding.
Fuck. No. Don't even
kidding.
put that out there.
That's our come away from this episode. Read Separate Like Stars and To Be With You for a really good example of a second chance romance.
I love it. That's how we're gonna end that. All right, guys. So if you enjoyed that episode, let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe. You can find us on all our socials at the Sapphic Gaze Podcast for Insta and TikTok. And we are also on that's
Spotify.
it. That's all we're on. Spotify.
Yep,
Spotify, YouTube, all that. Like us. Because we need validation. Sorry. Have a good day, everybody.